up. And then after 2025, with the DeepSeek moment, I think there was a bit of a vibe shift and people start realizing, hey, maybe there are a lot of innovations that Chinese tech is doing. Physical AI will emerge on top of China's hardware advantage.
Everyone is watching chatbot benchmarks. Who has the biggest model? Whose reasoning is sharper? Whose code gen is better? And while we've been watching that scoreboard, China has been building something different. Not a better chatbot, a different kind of AI economy. One that runs on factories, supply chains, EVs, robots, drones, energy infrastructure, and chips they're scrambling to make it home. That was Selena Xu. She writes about Chinese tech, and this was from a podcast called Humans in the Loop. There are a few ideas in that conversation worth slowing down for. Hey, if we haven't met, I'm Q's digital avatar. Q researches and shapes the ideas behind these videos. I help him produce and present them here. This video is about a question I think the West keeps asking wrong. We keep asking, can China build the best chatbot? But China seems to be answering a different question. Can we push AI into the physical economy faster than everyone else? That's a much harder question, and the answer matters a lot more. Let's start with the lazy version of the China story.
People have always seen Chinese tech as more of an imitator and copycat of Silicon Valley, but now I think it's time to recognize that it's very much an innovator in its own right.
Yeah. Copycat, imitator, cheap Silicon Valley knockoff. Baidu is just Google. Alibaba is just Amazon. Tencent is just Facebook. That was the story for about 15 years. It was kind of true in 2008. It is mostly not true now. And the part of the story that nobody outside China seems to want to update is the most interesting part.
I think you could say it was true to some extent. I think people like to say that, the truly original ideas always comes out from the West, the 0 to 1, right? And then China was really good at 1 to 100. But 1 to 100 also takes innovations. It's just less glamorous innovations, right? It's not.
This is the part to slow down on. The West loves the 0 to 1 story. The eureka, the founder, the garage, the moment of genius. But 1 to 100, turning an idea into something a billion people actually use, also takes innovation. It just takes a different kind. Manufacturing innovation, logistics innovation, supply chain innovation, tiny factory floor improvements that compound until the thing is impossible to build anywhere else. If you keep telling yourself the West invents and China just copies, you stop being curious about how anything actually got built. That's flattery. Okay, so if China isn't just copying, what game is it actually playing? Listen to how Selena describes it.
Manufacturing cars at large, actually. And, all the inputs and components that go into that, right? The actuators, the joints, the batteries, the revs, right? And then being able to move those valued like supply chains into the next sector and the next sector. So right now, this is being really good for robotics, right? So I think that kind of proximity to hardware clusters where you're able to rapidly prototype new kinds of, products and then iterate it at the scale of days and weeks instead of months. I think it's extremely helpful to turbocharge just like the speed of innovation in anything that needs hardware. So when people talk about physical AI, like not just like humanoids, but also like, the robotic arms and factories, the drones, the service robots that will clean the streets, that will bring your food in the hotel to your room, like all of these, and then drones, obviously. So I think all of this, physical AI will emerge on top of China's hardware advantage. And I think this is what the rest of the world is finding very hard to replicate, right? So I think this is one.
Slow down on what just happened there. Mobile phones, electric cars, actuators, joints, batteries, the whole supply chain slides over. Phones to EVs, EVers to robots, robots to drones, drones to humanoids, same factories, same engineers, same physical proximity. It lets you prototype on Monday, test Tuesday, change Wednesday, and ship Friday. That is not a thing you catch up to in 2 years. That is 20 years of industrial buildup, while the rest of the world spent those same 20 years offshoring the hard parts away. And China's policy posture bends toward this. The state is pushing money toward manufacturing, chips, EVs, robotics, and energy. Which brings us to the second thing Western coverage usually misses. China and the US are both saying AI, but they don't mean the same thing.
I think when it comes to AI especially, the government has been a lot more focused on widespread deployment and diffusion. So I think it's very focused on people adopting AI and feeling that AI is making their lives better. This is a bit different from, I think, in the US, there's so much like anti-AI sentiment right now, like that I'm hearing. I'm based in New York. So it's not as, insulated as the Bay Area. And you can really hear a lot of people just like in the US saying like, hey, like AI is going to take away my jobs. AI is going to make my kids more mentally ill. AI is going to increase my electricity prices and water prices. AI is terrible. We hate AI, right? In China, there is some level of anxiety as well. But I think broadly speaking, people are a bit more optimistic about it because the narratives that they're hearing from, policymakers and also like the companies is less about, how AI is going to replace all of them, but more about like, hey, like AI will make manufacturing better and lower your costs and help like automation for places like sectors that have labor shortage right now because of China's declining demographics. AI is going to be an elderly companion for people, China's aging population. AI will make your kids smarter because we have lack of teaching resources, but now, kids can use AI. So I think there's a very different kind of, at least so far, nascent approach to AI, and that China is doing quite well with a focus more on diffusion.
This is the sentence I kept coming back to. In the US right now, the AI conversation is largely defensive. AI will take my job. AI will hurt my kids. In China, the framing is different. AI will help with labor shortages. AI will be an elderly companion. AI will tutor kids. It changes what gets built. If the story is, this will help take care of grandma, you get deployment. And deployment is the part the chatbot benchmarks don't measure. Okay, but what about the actual models? Surely Silicon Valley is still ahead there? Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud.
Yeah, everyone's waiting for the next DeepSeek. It's like a long waiting game. But I think the biggest good like catalyst that kind of happened from DeepSeek R1 in January 2025 was that it galvanized the Chinese ecosystem into realizing, oh my God, like this is such a great way to really publicize the company, raise prestige, attract talent, attract investor funding, and really get your models used by more people. And it has had a very lasting effect in that a lot of companies that were previously closed, I think at the time like Baidu was closed source, many Max might have also been closed source, decided to be open source. A lot more companies just decided to start open sourcing anyways, from Zhipu, Z.AI to like Moonshot with its Kimi models. So there's been a slew of nonstop open source Chinese model releases that if now you look at any benchmark of the most intelligent open source models, they're predominantly all Chinese. So I think
January 2025 was the vibe shift. DeepSeek R1 came out. It was good, cheap, and open. It spooked markets because it changed the cost curve. But the durable thing DeepSeek did was the permission structure. It told every other Chinese lab, open source your model, win developer mindshare. So they did. Baidu, Moonshot, Zhipu, Alibaba. If you look at the top open source leaderboards now, Chinese labs are everywhere. These are models companies and governments can run on their own machines without routing everything through a US platform. That's an infrastructure play. Every developer in Vietnam or Brazil who builds on a Chinese model is one more thread of AI infrastructure that doesn't go through San Francisco. So pull this together. China is leaning hard into deployment, hardware, and open source. The state's incentives are pointed at the physical economy. There's one piece of this picture that turns the whole thing from a tech story into a geopolitical one, and it has a name.
I think China wants Taiwan regardless of the chips. The US would have more of an incentive to defend Taiwan because of the chips. So I think it really is, I think despite like TSMC opening a fab in like Arizona, I think most of the world's advanced AI chips, like maybe 90%, are still done and assembled in Taiwan.
This is where it stops being only about technology. A huge share of advanced AI chips still depends on Taiwan and especially TSMC. If Taiwan faces a blockade or hot conflict, the global AI supply chain takes a hit that clever software can't fix. Selena's line is the one to keep. China wants Taiwan for reasons that have nothing to do with chips. The US has an extra reason to defend it because of the chips. And China knows the chip dependency is the West's leverage. Being choked by the throat tells you how that pressure feels from the other side. Okay, let me try to land this. We look at China and we mostly see our own anxieties reflected back. That's a Rorschach test, not analysis. Maybe they're playing a different game. Chips they make closer to home, cheaper energy, factories that become AI deployment environments. If that's the game, then chatbot benchmarks are not the scoreboard. Deployment is. Hardware is the moat. Taiwan is the choke point. The question for the West is not only, are we building the smartest model? It's, are we building anything physical fast enough to matter?
I would just say, I think it would be so good if more people paid attention to China in the West in the way that Chinese people pay attention to America, right? Like people read about, they read the canonical like US startup memoirs. They read, Less Wrong. They read Substacks, right? They are on Twitter. I think there is that voraciousness and hunger for understanding and learning from the US. And I think when I sometimes talk to people here, there is so much more hubris and ignorance when it comes to China.
Voraciousness, hunger, reading the source documents, treating the other side as a system worth studying, not a monolith worth fearing. The thing she's pointing at isn't a policy fix, it's a posture. Curiosity over fear, study over slogans. The fix is free, read more, look closer. If this was useful, send it to one person who follows US AI news. I'll leave the link to Selena's interview and recommended Substacks below. That's a better use of your next hour than another model launch take. Thanks for watching.